Welcome back. This is Power Lunch Southern Africa with me, Zanele. Now, the South African sugar industry says it is fighting battles on multiple fronts. The first one is rising low-cost imports have delayed tariff projections, and they're also looking at the ongoing crisis at Tongaat Hulett. So while growers report stronger early season deliveries this year, industry leaders are warning that unless urgent intervention happens, the gains could quickly be erased, placing more than 1 million livelihoods linked to the sugar value chain under pressure. I referenced that article also from Business Day when I had a look. But joining me to have a conversation is Thomas Funke, the CEO of the SA Canegrowers Association. Thomas, I think it's with real anticipation for us to unpack quickly what the scenario is and also what is it that can be done. So maybe paint it for our viewers. What is the challenge at hand?
So our season has started really well. The mills are way ahead of last year. But that's a bit ironic given the imports that are flooding in and the delay by the DTIC and especially ITAC in reviewing our dollar-based reference price. Our application went in October 2024 already, and it hasn't been finalized yet. So we like to urge government to do that review and to conclude the investigation so that we've got some certainty as to how we're going to deal with these very low-priced imports that are flooding into South Africa at present.
The timing is unfortunate, but this might have been a challenge that you were seeing for quite a while, seeing coming. How far back have these issues been raised? What is the lag that's leading now for this to be a matter of urgency?
So it's an ongoing thing. 22 months ago, we raised it at first because we could foresee that we were going to run out of protection. And 22 months later, we still haven't got certainty on the matter. In the meantime, we've had our master plan phase 2 signed, which is very positive. And that was driven by Minister Parks Tau and Deputy Minister Godlimpi. To get that underway, and I think that's a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, we've also seen fuel prices double, so the cost of diesel is obviously a massive impact on our sector, as is fertilizer and the price of fertilizer. So these events that we've seen on the global stage will definitely impact on the sugar industry for this season especially.
Thomas, I think maybe let's also clarify that what we are asking for, is it only for us, or is the standard practice of how other countries are also managing to protect industries and not to protect them at the cost of the consumer, but protect them so that jobs can be retained, industries can be retained? We're on a journey towards industrialization. What does this mean when we're not able to act fast enough with tariffs and then end up being in a situation like this, and yet we speak industrialization every second day?
That's exactly right. So the sugar world is quite interesting. Only Brazil, who produces 80% of world exports, can actually compete at that price and make money. The other 194 countries that produce sugar all have protection offered by their governments in order to protect jobs and local production. And we fall into that category. We're very competitive. We're about 15th in the world in terms of cost competitive production. But no country in the world can compete against Brazil. And that's the risk we face, is that we've got this Brazilian sugar flooding into our market and eroding local market value. And by doing that, we have to export our sugar at a huge loss. And that puts farmers and I guess the milling companies also into tight financial situations where job losses will be a consequence of that. And, with Tongaat Hulett in the predicament that they're in, never mind the 18,000 farmers that supply Tongaat Hulett with sugarcane, there's a massive impact waiting to happen if we don't get this right.
And give me some of the losses in numbers. Like, what are the numbers of losses that we're going to be facing, per ton of sugarcane? I think you mentioned already job losses. What are the numbers looking like?
Yeah, so last season alone, and that's the season that just ended in March, at the end of March, we lost over R1 billion of revenue that we could have made in the South African market. And that would have supplied small-scale growers with funding, in deep rural areas where they don't have any other economic opportunities. And that's just in 1 year alone. So this year, our estimate's very similar. We're going to look at probably 200 or 250,000 tons of sugar being imported. That's the equivalent of 2 sugar mills worth of sugar coming in from Brazil. And that will displace South African sugar. So, if you look at industrialization and you look at local production, it's ironic if we produce too much sugar for our local market that we've got these imports coming in and further displacing South African sugar onto the local market. What we should be doing is protecting the local market so that South African sugar can be sold into SACU and that we can secure those jobs.
Global competitors. What is the argument around the current tariff mechanisms that we have? Are they outdated? Where are we at with them? How old are these tariff mechanisms?
The last tariff was set in 2018, and it was set in US dollars, and that's our reference price. And South Africa obviously has an exchange rate and a different inflation rate. So over time, the South African value of sugar creeps up into this dollar-based protection, and eventually it outstrips that. And now in recent times, we've seen the rand strengthen also. It's been around 19 rand to the dollar for quite a long time. And suddenly we're at 16 rand to the dollar, and that erodes protection also. And therefore, that dollar-based reference price, so that dollar amount, needs to be reviewed to a more realistic number. We've submitted documents to ITEC as part of our application process to show what the cost of production has done with sugarcane in rands, and obviously converted to dollars. That then gives them a new number which they can implement if they agree to that number. The process, however, is of such a nature that ITEC is now doing their own investigation, and hopefully they will have very similar findings to what the reality is on the ground.
And one more question on the IDC. IDC's granted some funding, I think it's 200 million that they've given to Tongaat. How much stability does that give an operation the size of Tongaat?
So we've been told that that funding was sufficient to carry them from April to the end of June. And hopefully, and we're working hard with government, with our ministers, the IDC, all parties involved, to try and find a solution before the court date in the middle of June. A solution would be obviously an extension of that funding, number one, and then an increase in the funding in order to ensure that Tongaat Hulett has access to these facilities whilst it is in business rescue, so that operations can continue and it can continue to accept sugarcane from the 18,000 farmers, and then obviously also process that into sugar and sell that on the local market.
Thomas, thank you so much. I think it's going to definitely be a story to follow. A lot of work that we are needing to do to relieve the pressure we probably are bringing upon ourselves. So it'll be great to see what we're actually doing to solve it. Thank you for your time. Thomas Funke, the CEO of the SA Canegrowers Association. Now on to Bishara Africa, the 2026, which is